Hi! Today we're going to be taking our bow hold that we learned on the pencil and putting it onto the actual bow. The first thing that I want you to do is review the previous video to make sure your marks are correct on your hand. The thumb has a dot on the inside corner right next to the thumbnail. Then the second dot that we put on was on our tall finger, and that's right at the crease, and those two touch to make a circle. Remember that part. Then we have a dot on the index finger in between the two outer joints, halfway, and it's a little bit of a line on the side of the finger. The next one is the dot on the ring finger that's right at the joint. And the last one is the dot that's on the very tip of the little finger. So check those dots and be ready to go then with your bow. Once you have your dots correct, let's take the bow out of the case. Now before we do that, make sure that you take it out gently. There are some very special materials. Sometimes it's made out of wood, sometimes carbon fiber or other materials, and they can break if you force the bow. So just take it out gently. And here's my bow. And when we're holding the bow, once we have it taken out like this, you can hold it just so that it's laying on its side a little bit here in both hands. You want to make sure you're using both hands just to be sure you don't drop it. You also don't want to be touching the hairs. These are hairs that are going to be drawing across the strings later. And if you touch them or if you touch them a lot, grab them, put your hands all over them, they'll collect dirt like crazy, and you don't want them to get dirty. So if you touch them just a little bit, which we probably will do today with our bow hold, we will maybe just graze it a little bit on the sides of the hairs, and that's okay, but don't grab a hold of the hairs. And now what we want to do is find the balance point. I'm going to show you, I have a marking right here where it balances on my fingers. So what I'm going to do is take two fingers, lay the bow right there on my two fingers and let go, and you see that it balances. Now if I put it in the middle, sometimes people think the middle should be the balance, like a teeter-totter, but it actually is falling that way because this end is heavier. This is called the frog. It's kind of a funny name, but this black piece here, and the frog is heavier, so that's why we have to go a little bit closer to the frog to find where the bow balances. So that's where my bow balances, and what I've done is I've taken a piece of tape and I've put it right there at the balance point. I actually had these dots, they're sticky dots, and I just cut a strip off of one of them, or you can use any other kind of tape that you have. But you want to mark that because that's where you're going to be holding the bow for a while until we get past the early bow hold stage and move into the professional bow hold stage. So now that you have the marking on your balance point, next thing we're going to do is tighten the hairs. You might take a look and see that your hairs are probably very close or even touching the stick. And so what we have to do is tighten this screw here by pointing the stick away from us. The tip of the stick is far away from me. I'm holding the frog end, and I'm going to tighten, righty-tighty, the screw, and it should turn for you. And I have to turn it maybe 3 or 4 times. It depends on how loose your hairs are to begin with, until you'll see that when I'm tightening, the hairs are actually pulling away from the stick. See how much space there is now between the stick and the hairs? And sometimes I test it just so that my little finger goes through there about up to the end of my fingernail. You can also see that the hair and the stick are parallel right here in the middle part. Up here it's farther apart, and down here it's farther apart, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So now we have it tightened, and we're ready to do the actual bow hold on the bow. Let's take the bow and put it back so that you're holding it with 2 hands. Take your left hand, this is the hand that's just going to be the helper hand, and hold on firmly onto the stick down here at the tip end of the bow. Have the hairs facing down toward the floor. Have the frog on the right side. And now we're ready to get our right hand free, because this will be our bow hold hand. Make the circle, which you already know how to do, open the circle, put it right over the top of the tape mark that you just put there, and do it the same way you did with the pencil. It should feel just like holding the pencil. The next step, of course, is to lay down the first finger right on the mark, put the ring finger right over the mark, right next to the middle finger, and then little finger on its tip. Let's tap a couple times with the little finger, tap with the first finger, and now we actually have a very nice bow hold. Let's do that all one more time just for some practice, because I'm going to ask you to do this 10 times a day so that you get accustomed to teaching your hand how to do this. So I'm going to keep holding with my left hand, let go with the right hand, make your circle by touching the dots, open your circle, take a hold of the bow right at the balance point marker, tip over so your first finger goes down. You could tap it a couple of times. Ring finger is next, and some people call these middle two fingers the hugger fingers because they do feel like they're hugging. And little finger goes on the tip. Tap a little bit with the pinky finger, tap with first finger, and now let's see if you can tap with the middle two fingers together. Good job. Okay, now let's check and make sure we don't have any excess tension. I just felt my shoulder going up and I want to get rid of any tension in my body that I don't need. But before I let go with my helper hand, I'm going to point the bow up toward the ceiling so that the tip is pointing up. Now it feels like it's very comfortable because I'm at the balance point and the bow feels very light there, which is why we always start beginners at the balance point. It doesn't cause too much tension. We can stir, we can make circles, we could write our name in the air, we can pretend like we're bowing straight up and down. This is a really good motion to start doing when you get a hold of the bow and don't need the help of your other hand. So now that you've been able to hold the bow correctly, it's time to put it away. There are some things that we haven't done yet, so it's not ready to be played on the instrument yet, but that will be coming in the next video or two. And so what we want to do is, before putting it away, loosen the hairs. So remember the screw that we tightened. Now we're going to point again away from us, hold the frog end of the bow, and now we're going lefty-loosey. We're going to loosen it all the way until you either see one or two hairs start to droop, I guess I would say. They start to fall a little bit away from the rest of the hairs, which is what mine looks like right now. Then you know you've gotten it loose enough. Or some hairs get all the way to the point of touching the stick, and that would be loose enough too. So once you have it loose, then you're ready to very carefully, with two hands, put it back into the case. So you are all set with a really nice bow hold. Now you know how to care for your bow, you know how to tighten the hairs and loosen them, and I would recommend again that you pick up and practice moving around 10 times a day and then setting it back down, because each time you put your hand into that position, you're training your muscles how to do it better and better.